Okay, welcome back. Hope you're all having a great week. Today, we're continuing our RBT exam practice question series, where we're going through 10 RBT questions and breaking them down, how you should think about them on your actual exam. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you're looking for our proven study materials, please check out rbtexamreview.com. We offer 3 full practice exams, a task list study guide, combo pack, which comes with everything. It's our best deal, and of course, our competency study guide as well. If you've recently passed, congratulations. Please let us know so we can include you in our Sunday shout out. Everybody else, keep the questions coming. I'd love to help. Work hard, study hard. Let's get to our questions. Question 1. Which of the following is not true about permanent product? All right, so I helped you out a little bit. I capitalized not. That's our key word, right? You have to be careful about nots, excepts, because it changes what we're looking for. What is the question asking? What's going on in the question? Well, we're talking about permanent product. And we're looking for things that aren't true about permanent product. So how do we tackle these definition questions disguised as application? Well, we start to think about everything we know regarding permanent product. We know that permanent product measures the product or the result of a behavior. We know we don't actually have to observe the behavior occurring to measure permanent product. We know that there needs to be a product to use permanent product. Using that information, now let's look at our answer choices and see what isn't true about permanent product. A, you're more concerned with the outcome than the behavior. Well, we just said what? We said we're concerned with the product or the outcome. A is true. It's not going to be our answer. B, you're able to do other things while the behavior is taking place. Well, we said what? We said you don't actually have to observe the learner or the behavior occurring to measure it. You can do other things while the behavior happens. Come back, take your permanent product data, and still get an accurate measurement. B is true. It's not our answer. C, it is a form of discontinuous measurement. So be very careful here, okay? Permanent product kind of exists in its own little landscape, right? We have continuous measurement where we are observing and recording all instances of behavior. We have discontinuous measurement, which is typically interval and time sampling. And then you have permanent product, right? Which doesn't really necessarily entail observing the behavior. We're more worried about the product. So permanent product kind of sits alone. It's not quite discontinuous. It's not quite continuous, okay? It's closer to continuous, but really it exists in its own little atmosphere. It is not discontinuous measurement. However, C isn't true. This looks like our best answer, but we don't just stop and move on. We read all of our answer choices. So D, you do not need to observe the learner when using permanent product. Again, that is true, right? We don't have to see the learner engage in the behavior to measure the product. Our answer here is going to be C. It is a form of discontinuous measurement. That is not true. Question 2, which of the following scenarios best represents punishment? Okay, again, back to back, right? Back to back definition questions disguised as application questions. And if you start looking at it like that, right, as these sort of definition questions that we're just applying, it becomes a little simpler. So let's attack it the same way. What's going on in the question? What are we looking at? We're looking at punishment. We know punishment decreases behavior, future behavior. We know we can add or take away punishment. We know punishment is a consequence. So using that information, let's find the scenario that represents all those things. A, when you try and power on your laptop this morning, nothing happens. You begin pushing the power button harder and harder. Careful. What is occurring here? Is a behavior decreasing? Well, no, right? You powered on your laptop and you're actually engaging in that response, right, at a more rapid pace, okay, because you receive no reinforcement. A is a good example of extinction into an extinction burst, but it's not punishment. Extinction is not punishment. A is in our answer. B, you pull up to Starbucks and order a coffee. You pull around to the window, pay, get your coffee. Very straightforward reinforcement question, right? This is how we continue going to drive-thrus, okay? This is how it works. You order, pull to the window, pay, get your coffee. Every time you go to a drive-thru, okay, typically, unless something crazy happens, this is what happens. B is a pretty good example of reinforcement. C, Greg says, point to the oven, points to the oven, and waits for his client to point before providing a consequence. What is Greg doing? Greg's providing some sort of prompt, all right? Waiting for his client before he provides a consequence. Do we know the consequence in C? We don't. We don't know what the client does. We don't know how Greg reacts. We can't definitively say C is punishment. Leaves us with D. Last week, another dog attacked your dog while walking down the street. Now you take the alternate route around the neighborhood. What happened in this question? You took one route walking your dog got attacked. You take another route or a different route now. Taking that route, the first route has decreased. That dog attack did what? It punished you taking that route. D is going to be our best answer. It's the only one where behavior decreased and changed due to a consequence. Okay. A, the behavior didn't decrease or change. It went through an extinction burst. B, it was reinforced. And C, we're not sure. D is the best answer for what represents punishment. 3, Jeffrey is overseeing 3 clients in a clinical setting. He hands them an assessment, sets a timer for 3 minutes, and says, I will be back in 3 minutes to check on you. When he returns after 3 minutes, he records who is working. What type of measurement is he using? Okay, be careful because we just spent so much time, right, on permanent product. And in permanent product, what do we say? We said we don't have to watch the behavior occurring. Well, in this case, the same thing's happening, right? Jeffrey's not actually watching for the full 3 minutes. However, is he recording the product? Is he coming back and looking at the assessment? No, he's simply returning to see who's engaged in a response after a set period of time. More specifically, at the end of a set period of time. So what are we talking about here? Is this continuous measurement? Well, it's not going to be continuous measurement because we are working in intervals, right? B, duration. Are we measuring how long it's taking to complete the assessment? No, we're measuring who's engaged, who isn't, after a certain amount of time. So if we look at momentary time sampling, that's going to be our best bet. Momentary time sampling says at the end of an interval, you look up, is the learner engaged? Is the learner not engaged? You record. A more specific type of momentary time sampling might be play check, planned activity check. However, it is not one of our options. So we're going to go with the next best thing, which is momentary time sampling. And then D, partial interval time sampling. That would imply that he would stay and observe the full 3 minutes. And if the client or the learner is engaged at all, he would record a response. Instead, okay, he's coming back at the end of each interval, checking to see who's engaged and measuring that or recording that particular instance of behavior. What type of measurement is he using? C, momentary time sampling. You wake up in the middle of the night to find a snack. You walk down the stairs, open the pantry, grab the Cheetos. You eat a handful and put the chips back. What is the SD in this scenario? Okay, behavior questions. Behavior scenario questions. You always want to identify the responses, the antecedents, the consequences. It's going to help you out because if they get more complex and you're dealing with multiple learners, then you really need to identify, okay, what learner are we concerned with? This one's more straightforward because we're simply concerned with our behavior, you, right? What are we trying to find? We're trying to find the SD. The SD signals a reinforcer or a consequence is available. What is happening in the question? Well, you wake up in the middle of the night to find a snack. Okay. You're assuming you're hungry, right? You walk down the stairs, open the pantry, grab the Cheetos, eat a handful, put the chips back. So what is the SD here? Okay. Well, you waking up in the middle of the night to find a snack, okay, because assumingly you're hungry or you want a snack, this is going to be the MO, right? This is going to increase the motivation for the snack. Just because you want the snack doesn't necessarily mean it's available. That's why waking up in the middle of the night to find a snack isn't the SD, because just because you want the snack doesn't necessarily mean it's available. Until something says, okay, now your snack is available, we don't have an SD. So then you walk down the stairs. That's just a response. Open the pantry, okay, a response, and then grab the Cheetos. Is walking down the stairs the SD? Well, no. There's no signal saying the snack's available. Opening the pantry? No. Grabbing the Cheetos? Well, now you have to see the Cheetos. Once you see the Cheetos, that's the SD, that reinforcement is available, okay? So if we look at our answer choices, A, waking up hungry in the middle of the night, that's going to be a motivating operation. Walking down the stairs is just a response, okay? Seeing the Cheetos is going to be our antecedent to grabbing the Cheetos, okay? The Cheetos are a snack. Seeing the Cheetos is the SD saying, okay, now our consequence, the Cheetos, is available. And then eating the Cheetos is another response. Behavior questions can be complex at first, right? There's a lot going on here. We need to know MOs, SDs, responses, consequences. When you're studying, you need to break down each question like we did here. Okay. Start thinking about in real terms in your day-to-day, okay, this situation, what's the SD? What's the consequence? What's the MO? The more you can apply this stuff to real life, you can then look at a question like this, which is a real life question, right? And easily start picking out SDs and consequences. But you've got to start doing it every day. Okay. Go back through here in this question if you got it wrong and start labeling. Okay, this is the MO, this is the SD, right? The more you do it, the more you practice, the better you're going to get. Our answer here is C, seeing the Cheetos. When would we most likely want to use a backwards chaining technique? Okay, backwards chaining. Part of our task chains, right? We have forward chaining where we are reinforcing the first step. We have backwards chaining where we are reinforcing the last step. We have total task chaining where we are doing the entire task chain. And then we have a behavior chain interruption strategy where we are intentionally interrupting a behavior chain. This question wants to know about backwards chaining. Why would we use backwards chaining? Why would we reinforce the last step and prompt our client to get to that step? What reason might we have for that? A, the client is quick to start any task that is given to them. If our client immediately jumps into tasks, wouldn't it be easy to use a forward chaining technique? You could say, hey, clean the kitchen. They start immediately. Once step one is done, we give them reinforcement. They're going to contact that reinforcement very quickly. Okay. If they're quick to start a task, forward chaining is probably going to be better. B, the client frequently engages in escape behavior. Now, why would this be good, right? If you might think, well, they have to wait till the end to receive reinforcement. Right. But we are prompting them through the chain, meaning we are helping them complete the chain until the very end. So if they're trying to escape, we're right there, right? Prompting them through. Backwards chaining is good for escape behavior, okay? Because reinforcement functions as escape. Think about it. If you reinforce the last step of a chain, the chain is done. That in itself is reinforcing. So in order to help this escape behavior, right, we might use backwards chaining and use escape as reinforcement. B is better than A so far. C, the client knows most of the task chain already. In that case, we would probably use a total task chain. We might only need to teach steps 2 and 6, something like that, okay? And then D, you only use backwards chaining once, forward chaining fails. That is incorrect. Your BCBA is going to decide what chaining technique to use, and you don't necessarily need to use forward chaining first. Backwards chaining is a totally viable strategy. So ultimately, when would you most likely want to use a backwards chaining technique? Out of our answer choices, B is going to be our best choice. The client frequently engages in escape behavior. Diana enjoys knitting in her free time. The staff at the group home tell Diana she is free to knit as much as she wants, as long as she helps the other members of the group clean up the cafeteria. The staff is using what? Okay. Kind of a tricky question. Ask yourself what is happening, what is going on in the question. Well, we know Diana enjoys knitting. The staff tells Diana she can knit as long as she helps the other members clean. The staff is establishing a contingency. If you clean, then you get your reinforcement, your reward, which is knitting. So if we're going to use a preferred activity as reinforcement to evoke a non-preferred activity like cleaning, what is that called? A, the Premack principle. That's what it's called, otherwise known as Grandma's law. All right. The opportunity to engage in a preferred activity is reinforcement for engaging in a non-preferred activity. Diana gets to knit as much as she wants, the preferred activity, as long as she completes the non-preferred activity of cleaning. Let's look at the rest of our answer choices. Why are they wrong? B, a high probability request sequence. Remember, a high P sequence, we are giving a lot of easy tasks first into a more difficult task, right? It's not happening here, okay? If anything, the harder task is coming first, right? Cleaning up. Negative reinforcement. Diana is earning the right to knit. Okay, we're not removing anything as a consequence. And then extinction, we're not withholding reinforcement for a behavior. Okay, extinction is very wrong. The best answer here is going to be A, the Premack principle. If we want extinction to be effective, how often do we need to implement extinction? Okay, this is more of a technical question. It really leans more towards the BCBA side of stuff, right? Knowing this answer isn't necessarily something you're expected to know, okay? But it's going to make you a better RBT. It's going to make you better at understanding extinction. When we use extinction, what are we doing? We are withholding reinforcement for a previously reinforced behavior. How often do we need to be implementing extinction? Because extinction is hard. Extinction bursts are difficult to work through, especially for parents, okay? But that doesn't excuse us when using extinction. So again, how often do we need to implement extinction? A, 80% of the time. If we only implement extinction 80% of the time, what happens the other 20%? Well, we're reinforcing the behavior. That behavior continues to persist. Not what we want. We're looking for 100% of the time extinction, meaning that behavior is never receiving reinforcement. Now, nobody's perfect, right? The occasional slip up, it's going to happen, but we need as close to 100% as possible. Even D, 90% of the time is not enough because 10% of the time that behavior is still receiving reinforcement. If anything, we're just changing, right, the reinforcement schedule. Extinction needs to happen as close, if not 100% of the time to be effective. C, only if the behavior is getting worse. It's not true, okay? Once we target that behavior for extinction, that behavior needs to be on extinction. B is going to be our answer 100% of the time. You sit down for a meeting with your BCBA about a client's treatment. The BCBA explains that she thinks you should be providing more reinforcement to the client and tells you to provide reinforcement anytime the behavior occurs. The BCBA is telling you to implement what type of reinforcement schedule? Okay, a lot going on in this question. Let's kind of analyze it, okay? What is the question asking? They're asking about the reinforcement schedule. What is happening in the question? Well, you sit down for a meeting, okay? The BCBA wants you to provide more reinforcement, okay? So in the back of your mind, you should be thinking, okay, we're thickening the schedule, right? We're providing more reinforcement, and tells you to provide reinforcement anytime the behavior occurs. If we're providing reinforcement anytime the behavior occurs, what are we providing? Well, we're doing an FR1, right? FR1 says whenever that behavior occurs, we reinforce. Another word for FR1 is what? Continuous. If we look at our answer choices, we have A, continuous, B, intermittent, C, FR1, D, both A and C. Well, we already established this is an FR1, which is also a continuous schedule. Every other schedule is intermittent. It's not going to be intermittent. Our best answer is going to be D, both A and C. Actually, a very easy question, okay? It just takes a little analysis to break down what it's saying, right? When we're dealing with reinforcement schedule questions without numbers, you just need to read a little more carefully, right? But once you do, this becomes a very straightforward question. Which of the following scenarios will be the most inappropriate as an RBT? Okay. Open-ended question, kind of vague. You know, you can't really attack this question like we like to attack it because we don't have enough information. But just start thinking when you see most inappropriate, start thinking ethicals, right? Start thinking, what is my role as the RBT? What can I do? What can't I do? All right. Knowing that, let's find the most inappropriate scenario as an RBT. A, during an assessment, you observe the client while your BCBA interviews the parent. Does that seem okay? Absolutely, right? You're assisting in assessments. RBTs assist in assessments, assist in parent training. Absolutely observing this client doing whatever. Perfectly appropriate. B, you observe a change in behavior during your session, so you start taking duration data instead of frequency data. Should you be changing, okay? Should you be changing measurements mid-session? Definitely not. You should not be making adjustments to the treatment plan, okay, without first approval from your BCBA. B is very inappropriate. Now you observe that change. Before you make any measurement adjustments, you need to contact your supervisor. B so far is the most inappropriate. Can we find one more inappropriate? C, your BCBA writes out a detailed treatment plan which you implement during your session. It's exactly what you're supposed to do as an RBT. Totally acceptable. And then D, while your session is going on, you get confused about the behavior plan. You quickly text your BCBA and wait for a response. That is also perfect. Task list says what? Open, prompt communication between supervisor and technician. If you're confused, find out immediately. D is great. The most inappropriate is going to be B. You observe a change in behavior during your session, so you start taking duration data instead of frequency data. If you wanted to measure length of time, which of the following procedures would be least appropriate? Okay, let's work backwards here, right? We're thinking about measurement, and we're going to measure length of time. What measurements won't record time for us? Well, frequency. Rate doesn't give us time. Rate has time added, right? But it's not going to give us a length of time, okay? It's going to tell us how many times something happened, right? So frequency and rate are out. What about things like partial interval and whole interval? Well, with partial interval and whole interval, we're still measuring responses, right? We're not measuring time. We're using intervals, which are time, but we're not measuring how long a response is occurring, right? We're measuring if it occurs or not. So partial and whole interval are out as well. Leaves us with things like duration, IRT, latency. Duration, of course, is the length of time, right? How much time has passed. IRT, also a length of time, the time in between two behaviors. Latency, again, length of time, time in between the ST and the response. If we look at our answer choices, A, partial interval, is something we said doesn't measure length of time. Then we have duration, IRT, and latency, which we already established do measure length of time. So what is our answer going to be? A, partial interval. Okay, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Check out rbtexamreview.com for all of our study materials. Questions, comments, please let me know. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.